Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, Girl Gone Crypto. I have an awesome guest, and we're going to be discussing a really fun topic that I actually get a lot of questions about, and that's getting hired in the blockchain space. And so with me, I have Scott Offord, who is a director at Truffle. So Scott, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, Leah. Excited to be here.
So just to kind of start out, can you give us just a little bit of an overview of working in the blockchain space and maybe what kinds of positions seem to be in demand right now?
Yeah, so being in the blockchain space, it's exciting because it's very much cutting edge, and so it attracts a lot of people. You get a lot of attention towards wanting to work in this environment. And one of the big kind of features that I see a lot with companies that are blockchain companies is they are decentralized infrastructurally. So being able to work remote, although granted we're all at this position in time working remote, but giving you the ability to have that freedom to work anywhere you want is very attractive. I think that opens up lots of doors to find great talent. But generally, the positions that we're seeing, not only from when we hired, but when I've seen kind of just across the board, it's not just developers. We're seeing more needs of PMs, sales reps. You're getting the business analysts, some of the non-tech part of the whole kind of DevOps life cycle is what we'll start to see more of, which is a good news. It's an indicator that companies are moving past proof of concepts, and they're actually delivering on things, and they're generating revenue, and they're needing more people to kind of sell their product and their tools or technology.
Awesome. And I think that's really great to hear because a lot of the people that I think are starting to look at, wanting to work in the blockchain space, they're not necessarily the developers. A lot more of the soft skills, the sales, the marketing that, people are starting to pay attention. And so maybe what kind of tips would you have for ways that people that are maybe in some of those sales, marketing, PR, kind of softer skill positions can do to bolster their resume so that they are more attractive to blockchain companies?
Yeah, resume is very important. I think everyone expects a good polished resume. It takes time to develop something out. You don't want to just slap it together using a Word document, assistant or helper or whatnot. But I would actually start with LinkedIn. That is a platform, especially nowadays, where there's a lot of interaction going because it's personable. You get real-time requests when you connect with people. You can instantly message them. There's a lot of just back and forth that you otherwise may not get right away if you're just launching your resume off into the abyss and hoping somebody will work with you that way. But one of the biggest tips I would say is in your profile, if you're coming from a non-tech, perspective, looking to get into blockchain. So let's say you are a business developer or a sales rep and you want to work for a blockchain company. I would litter key terms in your LinkedIn profile like blockchain or specifically, specify a platform that you are privy to wanting to work for, whether it be Bitcoin or Ethereum or Quorum or, Quora. There's a lot of good ones out there. But the more key terms that you kind of put in your profile, the more you'll get tagged. So when companies are looking to hire a salesperson, they're probably going to type in blockchain and sales, and and they may put some other keywords. So the more that you have, the more that it will kind of ding you and trigger some of those words, and you just want your I guess position to be put up at the top of their search results. So taking time to do that, and there's lots of ways to do it, but starting in LinkedIn is a great opportunity just to really kind of highlight and stand out. And then additionally, yeah, resume is, well, say, would be secondary. You definitely want to take time to do it, but start with LinkedIn.
So, in terms of people building their kind of body of work and experience, what kinds of things can they be doing? Is just watching kind of educational things online and learning more about blockchain enough? Or are there certain certifications or trainings or things that would help them just stand out to an employer?
Yeah, certs are great. There's not a lot of accredited, programs right now, especially in colleges. There's a big push right now to get blockchain accredited in comp sci programs, which is great. And I know we at Truffle are trying to help aid to that. But online certifications are great just because it's quick, it's easy. There's a lot of free ones out there. I would definitely recommend you just doing a quick search on YouTube, for example. There's a lot of good YouTube. I'm good friends with Greg from DAP University, who does a great job of kind of just teaching you just the soup to nuts of blockchain development if you're looking at it from a development perspective. But from non-tech wise, YouTube's a great platform. A lot of live stream feeds, especially nowadays. There's conferences that are going on, virtual ones. I would definitely encourage a lot of people to participate in that, because that's where you learn some of the firsthand, experience from these, other people that are kind of really pushing the ecosystem, blockchain related, to kind of create something that's new and innovative. And for you to sit there and learn and get this kind of real time information is going to help drive kind of your knowledge and how to speak to what not to talk about. There's do's and don'ts with blockchain, and what's kind of hot, what's trending, where are we going with it, and you get that definitely through going to these conferences. But I'd say there's quite a bit of certifications you could pay for too. There's a lot of good ones out there, but certs aren't the end all. I think at the end of the day, you just want to get yourself in a position to get to that phone call, right? Or get the email back saying, hey, we're interested, because that's the part where you get to now showcase your skills and what you've learned. So all the YouTube videos that I've watched, all the conferences that I've attended, some of the online certification programs I've done, you kind of pack that all together, and that's great. But once you get onto that call on your first interview, that's where you really get a shine, which is very important.
So speaking of the interview, what kind of tips would you have for people that are interviewing? Is there anything that's kind of different in the blockchain space that you would recommend, or is it kind of standard?
It depends on what position. I would say don't talk about ICOs so much. I think we get that a lot, even when we'll interview here at our company. You bringing that up is just kind of stay away from it. You'll save yourself a lot of I don't know what the word is, but yeah, just don't do that. I would definitely talk about. And it all comes back to you doing your homework first. So whoever you're talking to, find out which blockchain they work on, right? Don't just start throwing out other blockchains that they have nothing to do with, or different protocols that they aren't really necessarily using, or there's a lot of things that you need to find out before you even start to talk about. So do your homework first. So if it's on Ethereum, you can start doing your research on E 2.0. And some of the things going on with sharding or the beacon chain. Just show that you're paying attention to what's going on, which is very attractive on the other end when the person is interviewing you, because it shows that you're doing this on your own time. You're not claiming that you're contributing to some of the latest causes. And for the example of E2, you're just doing your research and you're trying to keep up. And I think having that understanding goes a long way as far as getting your foot in the door and also standing out. Other things that you can kind of talk about is, going on, I would say a good site for reference is State of the Dapps. That's a good website to kind of see some of these projects that are live on various types of blockchain mainnets. And so going and finding some of the kind of more highly trafficked ones, more of the popular ones, just to reference on how they're from their deployment, what things look like, what they're doing when it's on mainnet. Doing a little bit of research on that kind of just shows that you're kind of indulging into the ecosystem, that you're not just using key buzz terms like blockchain and ERC20 and things like that.
So where are a lot of these blockchain companies looking for applicants? You mentioned LinkedIn before. Is that kind of the main avenue where they're starting, or where are these blockchain companies looking for applicants?
So a lot of them actually is just through word of mouth. What I've seen the most success are people that are going to meetups or conferences. And now, granted, you can't go on site right now, but generally speaking, it's, if you're doing some homework and you're looking at, again, referencing something like State of the Dapps, you would go and you'd find a company that's, has a live dApp on the blockchain. You go to it and you find out the company has, 18 employees or 15 employees. And so connecting with some of their, hiring authorities, whether it be a dev manager, a CTO, or a sales manager, if you're looking to go that route. And that's kind of going through the back door on getting yourself exposed, because they may not be hiring or they may not know they have a need, but it goes back to, if you have a nice, attractive profile, it's littered with blockchain terminology, some use cases, projects that you've contributed to in the open source world. You got GitHub on the very top, so they can see that as validated. You not just use buzzwords. You actually can prove that you've done it. which is very important. It's one thing to have a cool looking resume and profile, but when you get on the phone, if you have no idea how to speak to some of the things that you included, you're going to look like an idiot. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. So I would say kind of doing that route of, finding the companies that are kind of booming. They have apps that or dApps that are live. They have a team size of maybe 5 to 7, so they're on that cusp of eventually going to need to hire more people. And if you can get your foot in the door before they even recognize it, it's just going to increase your chances of getting hired. Traditionally, you can go to, I think Dice they're working on a whole blockchain section. There's a couple of traditional kind of job applicant tracking platforms that it doesn't hurt to put your resume on. But I just think nowadays, you need to do the legwork. You got to go and kind of research companies that you would want to work for. Like, I want to work for Truffle. Okay, great. Find out who works there. Do some studies on where are we at in our kind of roadmap and what have we deployed. And if you know all this stuff and you're presenting that to me in a message, I'm going to probably reach back out to you at least and have a conversation.
So you mentioned a minute ago about, not just putting buzzwords in your profile, but actually being able to speak to it. So I'm just kind of curious. Let's flip the switch for a second from the employer side. Do you see that happen a lot where people are kind of overselling themselves? And what tips would you have for maybe blockchain companies to see through that with people?
Yeah, overselling would be like, we're looking for a CTO, right? Or a CFO. And then you go in and you find that there's 2 employees working there. I think they're using big, high level, C-level titles to look like this is a very attractive position. And in reality, that CTO is just an individual contributor who happens to be a developer, right? I think it's a cesspool in terms of blockchain. I mean, we're getting a lot more developers. And so that's a good news, right? That's when we're seeing a lot of Web 2 developers move into the Web 3 space. And so now that there's more options, companies are kind of, overdoing it on their sales approach on trying to attract talent. And I would say a good way to if you find yourself in a conversation where you're not sure if it's a viable company, ask them about, their roadmap in terms of, what's their runway, I should say, is a great question. Like, how long is your runway financially? If I'm a confident company, generally I'll be upfront with them and say, yeah, we have, funding for another 1.5 years or 2 years. That's a good indicator of whether or not you're going to take that risk to say, great, this could only go for 2 years, but it's an awesome company. I love their protocol. Their tech stack is great. I'm going to learn a lot. I want to pursue it. Or you hear, yeah, our runway is only 6 months and we're looking for a CTO to help get us to that next phase. I don't know. So asking those right questions. And then I think we're starting to set back on companies that are trying to use ICO and what they've raised as a way to attract people. The SEC has done a great job of kind of, putting those folks to the curb for a while. And so we're not seeing as much of that nowadays, but it's still good to know to ask them, how were you funded? Another great question. Is it traditional VC, angel investment? And so that way you can kind of do your due diligence on whether or not, okay, they did get funding, but it's, I'm not very comfortable in how they did it. There may not be completely, approved, right? They're just kind of in a position where they're taking their risk, and do you want to join them in that risk taking? So yeah, just being smart, ask the right questions. Don't just get excited because, blockchain company reached out to me. I think we get very we become like a fanboy or fangirl and like a celebrity, right? Like, oh, this is amazing. Crypto Genius 101 reached back out to me and they got 4 followers, but it's okay because this is a legit company.
So you had just, given some good tips about doing your research on companies and really kind of presenting that about the blockchain protocol that they're built on and all these things. But what other tips would you have for kind of do's and don'ts of reaching out to companies?
Yeah, so the best part about LinkedIn, let's say you've identified, and I say this a lot to folks, is that are leveraging blockchain that you would love to work for. Start there. Figure those out and identify it. Then on LinkedIn, you click on the company profile, and underneath it, it will say, view all employees who work here. So if I'm a developer, I click on that. I'm going to go in the search bar now that the company's been indicated. So if you have Truffle or let's say Consensus or something like that, then you want to type in like developer or engineer or architect, somebody that's specifically in line with what you do, and then start connecting with them. The beauty, and this is where I think it takes this kind of strategic move, and I used to do this a lot, is as soon as they accept your connection request, write them a message. And so that comes with, okay, I've narrowed my companies to 5 that I really love. I'm connecting with all like the hiring authorities, so development managers or sales managers, CTOs, people that have kind of that high level profile. And I'm also kind of checking out their profile, just referencing some cool key maybe projects that they're including in their profile. So the don'ts is don't go right in and say, hey, I'm looking for work, can you hire me? It used to work, but it just comes off as like, you may be considered in kind of a blast message. So for all I know, and I get this a lot, I'm sure you do, or you can tell they didn't really look at your profile. They're just sending a message, click next, click next, click next. Mm-hmm. And it may have nothing to do with what I'm doing. I got a message the other day asking me if I wanted to be a fitness coach for the gym, and I haven't been in the fitness world in like 10 years. So clearly they didn't look, they just pulled that up on a search result because it has it in my profile somewhere. So don't, look at the profile, but when you connect, that's when you make your message concise and get right to it. Say, hey, I noticed you had a project, and reference it and say the code is awesome, or something that shows that you made it personal, that you took the time to read the profile. That goes a long way. They may not always write back, but at least it indicates that you're not just, randomly shooting messages to anyone and everyone, kind of doing this resume, rocket launcher, or just splatting it out, hoping somebody grabs it, right? I think we need to take our time, and now's the best time than ever, right? We're all at home. We have a lot of time to be able to do this kind of stuff. And so making sure that you are doing your due diligence. So when you connect somebody, you're bringing up things that are pertinent to their profile, because then they're going to see it as this is an actual good connection. And then if you can get engagement going, then subtly put in, hey, I'm also looking for, work. I'm a developer. Here's some of my projects, put your GitHub profile on there. Or if you're doing sales, say, hey, this is the things that I've done in the blockchain community. I've been a speaker. I've done this and this and this. That's where you have that kind of audience where they're kind of, all eyes are on you after you've had a couple of conversations. So it's a little bit longer, but I think it pays off in the end.
Now, have you seen COVID and this big global pandemic impacting the rate at which blockchain companies are hiring? Or what are your thoughts on how that might change hiring in the blockchain industry in the next year or so?
I'm sure there's been a little impact, but generally speaking, there's quite a few blockchain companies that are still in the pre-revenue base. So they've had a very large raise. So they have a lot of funds. They've invested wisely. And so they really aren't looking at COVID as a kind of a hindrance. There's the idea that the technology must go on. And so development-wise, they're still continuing to produce and to commit and contribute to their overall roadmap deliverables and goals. And so I haven't, in my personal kind of vantage point, I haven't seen many blockchain companies fold. I'm sure there are some due to all of this. If anything, there's been some minor layoffs in some of the bigger companies, but there's quite a few that are still in a position where they haven't really been impacted because they were smart with their money, and they still have allocated funds for hiring that hasn't been touched. And so I think we're going to be fine. It's hard to tell what the future looks like, right, for the next year. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we were kind of just seeing how is COVID right now as we stand with the economy, how's that going to affect companies like ours and anybody in blockchain. And I think we kind of saw that the good news is we're starting to see the digital dollar and crypto and blockchain being talked more on the government level and federal level. And that's great, because if that stuff starts to get approved, I mean, this technology continues to need to be built. So we're going to see more and more funding and focus on developing these initiatives to help with this kind of, America 2.0, what some people are calling it. So I think the technology and blockchain, we're in a great spot right now as we try to help kind of combat this COVID, pandemic.
So you mentioned State of the dApps as kind of a good resource for people to start looking for certain companies that they may want to work for. Do you have any other tips for ways that people could start to find some of these blockchain companies?
I mentioned it a little bit ago. Virtual conferences are great because you can go to their company sponsorship page on the website, and you'll see a long list of who's going to be presenting. better yet, I mean, find the presenter and connect with them before you go to the conference to attend it. These are great ways to see, okay, these companies are going to talk about what they're doing, where they're going. They're going to reference if they're pre-revenue or if they're making revenue and they're profitable. And you're getting all this information before you even take time to actually connect and, have a conversation or see if they're hiring. And so another backdoor way of doing it. And now we're seeing a lot of virtual conferences that are starting to come up blockchain wise. I've been to a couple and it's been great because you're starting to see some candid conversations about where companies are going, the struggles, the shortcomings, pitfalls, and also the successes. And this is where you have a chance as an audience or somebody who's just an attendee to kind of take notes and make mentions of, specific speakers that are representing companies that are doing well. So once the conference is over, guess what? You have a great talking point. You can say, hey, I listened to your talk and I really enjoyed what you said about X, Y, and Z. Make it super short. They have no idea your overall goal might be, hey, I'm looking to get work. But initially, this is a good starting point because now you're having, you're not coming in as kind of a spam type message. You're clearly you attended the workshop or attended the webinar, whatever it was, and you're actually making some good kudos, if you will, on taking the time to listen to them speak. And that can also go a very long way. So I would say that's a very good app, especially in this time frame that we're in, that we're all sitting, we're getting bombarded with emails and emails saying, come to my conference, it's free. And like, it's kind of overwhelming. But the nice thing is, if you see a conference that looks appealing, go to the sponsorship, webpage of the particular conference and see which companies are going to be there and who's speaking.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great tip. And you're right. There are so many virtual conferences happening right now during this whole quarantine lifestyle that we're all living.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge when it comes to getting hired in the blockchain space, especially some of the do's and don'ts and tips for people to tweak their profiles and where they can, be looking into some of these companies more. Before we go, is there anything else you wanted to maybe share on the subject that we haven't talked about yet?
I think that the best part is just be confident. I mean, we have so much time on our hands. And so here's a great opportunity to study, to learn, to take advantage of a lot of the great free resources out there. You don't have to dig into your pocketbook to learn good blockchain curriculum. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm happy to help in any way. You can ping me at scott@trufflesuite.com if you have questions. We're always here to help. We love the open source world. We love our community. And so any way that we can kind of help contribute to those who are interested in, whether it's take a look at my profile on LinkedIn, does it look right? Can you check out my resume? I'm happy to do that. But really just show that you have the confidence where you're not overzealous and boast, but you've taken the time to really appreciate, and it feels authentic, because that's what we ultimately want. We want people who are passionate about this technology, who want to make use of what they see is going to be this groundbreaking, as we move into this Web3 world, that's going to really have some great use cases, and I want to be a part of that. And I think that shows in conversations that you're having, whether it be an interview or just an email, back and forth over LinkedIn. That passion is something that we all need, especially nowadays. We want to find some hope, and I think this technology will give us that. So we're here to help. And like I said, Leah, you can definitely contribute and help out in many ways yourself, because we're all kind of in this together. But be safe. I mean, at the end of the day, safe and sane. I mean, that's, we'll get through this, and great time to do your research now. Find your companies you want to work for. Truffle will be hiring in a few months, so definitely don't be afraid to ping me.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you again so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And I will put links to all of the social handles where people can find you and find Truffle below. So thank you again.
Thank you, Leah. Stay safe, everybody.